Hello and welcome to this week's Lalcast. Apologies, it's been a while since the Cheltenham preview, but it took me a bit of a while to recover from that Jerry Colombe getting beaten in the line. But sure, we'll come back to that another time. Today's guest is someone who will need no introduction to any football fan in Northern Ireland. 6 Irish League titles, 5 Irish Cups, and numerous other trophies. With over 1,000 appearances in senior football and 563 goals, it's football icon and legend, Glenn Ferguson. Hi Glenn, how are you?
Good, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing the best. Thank you so much for giving me your time for coming on today. I really appreciate this. And I think I said to you before, I might be too excited to meet you here, so I hope I don't come across as a complete fanboy, but growing up watching you play was unreal, and I'm so excited about this. So thank you very much for giving me your time.
No problem at all.
So I think we'll maybe start where it all started from. Like, where did it all begin for you? Were you the best footballer in school? Were you just always head and shoulders above everyone else when it came to scoring goals?
No, absolutely not. When I was a young boy, I came back to Northern Ireland. My dad had a job and we moved to Wales, and we were in Wales for just over a year, and the school over there unfortunately was a rugby school, so I got through into the deep end to play rugby, which I didn't enjoy. But then we moved back home, and I moved into Ballybeen estate, and I got to meet a couple of guys, a couple of friends who are still lifelong friends, and they played for a boys club called Dungoyne Boys.
Yeah.
So that's where basically my football journey started. Went straight in there. I think Dungoyne Boys were started in 1977, and I came home in 1979. So they were only a couple of years old, and I got to know a few boys through school, and then went to Dungoyne Boys. But back in the day, unlike today, where football teams are picked on a calendar year, back then it was a school year. So I was a July birthday and I had to play up a year. So I certainly wasn't the best player in the team, because I was competing against some boys who were technically a year older. But also, when I was very young, when I was up until about 16, I was really small. Yeah. Threw out onto the right wing, didn't score as many goals as people maybe would have thought. But when I started to get a bit older, I was playing or up against, and there was a footballer who actually played for Linfield, but also went on to play for Glasgow Rangers, and Philip Nell. And Philip Nell was probably one of the best players ever to come out of Ballybeen. So as a young lad playing a year down, playing up against Philip Nell and trying to get his position, it wasn't going to happen, because even back in the day we always used to joke, Philip was that important to the team. We used to meet at Dungoyne Community Centre before the game, an hour before the game, and everyone was there, and everybody got into the minibus, and we had to drive around and pick Philip up at his house. Yeah. So that's how important he was to the team. But we had some really good players in that team, and I stuck with them until I was 16. But great memories. We won the all UK championship. We beat Hillsborough Boys here at Windsor Park. I went over and played a team called Halifax at Craven Cottage. So as a 14-year-old boy going over to play in what was then a first division football ground. It was great experience as well, but to win the trophy as well was great. But some great memories growing up, and playing with the same boys who I played on a school team, and playing in my club team in Dungoyne, playing in the morning for the school and going out in the afternoon to play for Dungoyne with a dirty knees still, not even a chance to get washed. So great memories, and as I say, still very friendly with a good lot of those lads now.
I suppose football back then when you're a kid's a bit easier, isn't it? Just the enjoyment of playing, and as opposed to maybe the pressure when you get older, playing for trophies week in, week out.
Absolutely. I think from then to now, the pressures that not only just the kids are under, but they're put under a lot of pressure. And these days, I notice it. Not everyone now, but some parents can be pushy. They expect their kids to run before they can walk. They want them playing for teams who they're not capable of playing for. There's so much emphasis on now trying to get a move across the water. There's a lot of scouts at games. There's academies springing up everywhere. So the kids are under immense pressure to get fitter, to get better, to try and get themselves into the shop window and try and get a move. So it is difficult. Years and years ago, as I say, we played for fun. We went out, played a match in the morning, stinking, went and played a match in the afternoon, had a bit of crack after it, as much as it was nice to win and get through in tournaments and cups and whatever, but there was no real pressure on us to win.
The good old days.
Yeah, it was fantastic back then. It was really good.
So did you finish up from Dungoyne and go straight to Ards then?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
Even as far back as Dungoyne, I remember, God rest him, my manager was a lad called Billy Lennox, really good. Him and Jimmy Greer would have taken us. And even back then, we had a lot of our age group who, Bob Bishop was a scout for Man United, and there was maybe 4 or 5 of them going to Man United in trials, and other players were going to Rangers and stuff like that. And I always remember Billy Lennox saying to me, don't you worry about it, your time will come, I can see that you've got a wee bit, and, don't be getting upset because the other ones. And I always remember to this day, I never ever really got a trial until I was in my mid-20s, but it turned out to be, a half-decent Irish League footballer, and some of the ones who got trials maybe didn't, and maybe didn't have the same bit of luck or the same attitude, but I always remember that Barrett Willie saying them words to me, But when I left Dungoyne, as I say, I was a year younger, and a couple of my mates had already moved on to Ards. I would be very friendly with. There was a lot of brothers played for Ards called the Campbells. There was Rob, Brian, and Alan and Paul. 4 brothers all played in the Ards first team at the same time, so I'd be very friendly with them. So they said to me, "Why don't you come down and try it?" By that stage, I was actually starting to grow a bit and starting to fill out a bit. So I went down, played for our youth team under Harry McElroy, and done really well. And I think I scored over 35 goals in my first season playing for the under-16s. And then it just happened to progress very quickly. The following year, I turned 17 and was playing for the youth team again. The under-18s at the start of the season, done well, getting into the reserve team, and actually made my debut. So I played for the youth team, the reserves, and the first team all in the same season. And on my debut, I was going down. I was only a squad member. I'll never forget it, going down to play Glenavon, ironically enough. And there was a lad who actually played for Linfield as well, Philip Maxwell, who was playing for Ards at the time. And on the bus, on the way down to play Glenavon, he got a phone call to say that his wife had taken ill, and he had to get off the bus and go back. So, and back in those days, you only had like 1 sub as far as I remember. So basically I was through in at the deep end, and we beat Glenavon 1-0, and I scored the goal on my debut. So it couldn't have went any better for me, but I was glad to a certain extent the way it happened, because I didn't have time to get nervous, because you're only an hour away from the game. Unfortunately for Philip, I think his wife was okay, but I was able to go and score on my debut, which really set it up for me.
It's funny how things like that work out, isn't it? Like,
that's unbelievable. It's as a young boy just going down for the experience, travelling down, and then unforeseen circumstances, and you're through at the deep end.
But that's a measure of you. You had that one chance, sort of. You weren't expecting it, but you had that one chance. You went on, scored in your debut.
Yeah, and it was great. I couldn't believe it when there was no mobile phones or nothing in those days, so you get a call box and you phone home to tell your mum and dad what had happened, and I'll not be home tonight, going for a pint with the boys now to celebrate, so, and that's just exactly how it happened.
Yeah, so you had 2 or 3 years at Ards, and then the move to Glenavon.
Yeah.
I think, as I was saying to you just beforehand, I had a friend ask me, look, when you moved to Glenavon, was there other teams in for you, and you chose Glenavon as opposed to, was Linfield in for you, or Glentoran in for you? No,
but believe it or not, it happened at a time I was playing for Ards, and we weren't the best team in the league.
Yeah.
By any stretch of the imagination. And I mean, through various managers, I think I was at Ards for 3 years and probably played under 8 managers.
Oh, right, okay.
And unfortunately for me, a really, really good player, and I would still speak to him on a regular basis, Peter Dornan, Linfield legend, came in as manager of Ards. And it was in around December time. Peter was actually playing on the team and was still one of the best players in our team. There's no doubt about it, but he was the manager as well. And he decided that he was going to let me go because he didn't think it was good enough. So, and that was the January. So deflated as I was, I decided, sometimes you need to take a step back to go forward. So a guy who I knew at the time, Alec Robson, who was actually a Glentoran legend in the 70s and 80s, Alec asked me, he was running a team called Fisher Buddies up in Dundonald, again, full of people and characters from Ballybeen Estate. Some of the lads who were really good players and had trials, Gary Brown had been to Man United, and Bobby Kerndorf had been to Coventry, and there was a lot of players all playing in that team who were good players, but it decided at that time, they were probably 3, 4, 5 years older than me at that stage, decided that, they just wanted to play football with their mates for fun. Yeah. So I went and I played for Fisher Buddies for the remainder of that season and scored a few goals. We won the league. I can't even remember, it might have been 2B, 3A. I'm not even sure what it was at that stage, but enjoyed it, just going back playing again and playing with a smile on my face. And it was one of the last games of that Fisher Buddy season that Terry Nicholson actually came with Alex to one of the matches, and it was after the game. Terry had obviously seen me scoring for Ards against Glenavon. He was the manager of Glenavon at the time, and he asked me would I be interested in coming down. So I said, absolutely, it's a chance to get back in it again. And, it was a big step for me, moving from what I was so used to and knowing everybody in around Ards, but going down to Lurgan, it seemed like a million miles away. But I went down and the training sessions were good. The players, we had a really good team, good squad. And when I went in, I really did hit the ground running, and playing with Steve McBride was there. Gary Blackledge was there. Yeah. Jeff Ferris, really good, strong, experienced players. He helped me along. Gary Blackledge was immense in what he'd done, and learning off him to a certain extent, because I didn't play through the middle. Stephen McBride played one side, I played the other, and Blackie basically didn't leave the 18-yard box, but just scored goals. So I got into the team, stayed in the team, and in my first season scored 37 goals. So it was a really eye-opener for me, going somewhere different and doing so well.
It's not a bad return, that.
No, it wasn't. It was good, and as I say, we had a really good team, and we got to the Irish Cup final against Portadown. I think we played 4 or 5 cup finals that year, and 4 of them against Portadown. The Ulster Cup, the Gold Cup, the Mid Ulster Cup, the Irish Cup. So we were competing. So it was good. But it was that season then, at the end of that season, that's when Linfield showed an interest in me, because it had a good year. But I didn't want to be disappointed so I thought, one swallow doesn't make a summer. I've had one good season. I need to go and really prove myself and make sure that I can do this on a regular basis. Yeah. So I decided to turn Linfield down, believe it or not. And I stayed at Glenavon, and as I say, things got progressively better, and we had a fantastic time there, and the team got stronger. We signed Raymond McCoy, and it's well documented the success that Steve McBride, myself, and McCoy had. But the rest of the team were really good as well. With Robbie back in goals, and Paul Byrne, Mickey McKeown, Dee McCulloch, midfielder Stevie Conville, Fintan McConville, really, really good players. And that's why we were able to compete. So, no, I really enjoyed my time there, and the club was so welcoming. The fans were great. The ladies in the Broomhill Lounge, looked after everyone. So, no, I really enjoyed my time there. It was really good.
You can tell just by the way you're talking that you just really look back on that fondly, those times.
Yeah, it was fantastic. The only disappointing thing was we came so close one year, and I think it was 94, to win in the league. We needed to win the last match of the season. And in fact, we were playing Portadown. If Portadown had won, they could have won the league. If we won, we could have won the league. And Linfield were playing Glentoran.
That's right. Was the league sitting in the M1 somewhere?
That's right. It was in the roundabout and at Mara roundabout. And I think the only way Linfield could have won it is if we drew with Portadown and Linfield had to win by 2 clear goals.
Something there, remember?
Yeah. So we were 2-0 up and missed an opportunity to go 3-0 up. Portadown then scored 2 late goals, and then Linfield. Our game went on, I think, about 5-6 minutes after the Linfield game. Yeah. Linfield won 2-0. Robert Casey, I think, missed an absolute sitter for Portadown to win it for them. And then the final was went, and Linfield were the league champion. So
those were the days you listened to it on the radio. I remember the days of, you don't get that now at football grounds. I think football fans miss out on that.
No, definitely.
It's all social media.
That day was, for footballing reasons, for the whole, people didn't know what was happening, the anxiety of it, are we going to win, are we going to lose it? And we thought we had won them, I thought we'd lost it, and then obviously Linfield won it, so that was disappointing for us at Glenavon, because we thought that was our time, the squad we had, the way we were playing, the goals we were scoring, and then just after that, then we started to lose players, with Gary Smith and Mark Glendenning, the team got really, really strong and was strengthened, and then some of the players started to leave over the next couple of seasons. So that was my time to think, was the club losing ambition to go and try and win the league, maybe cutting their cloth to a certain extent as well financially. But I just thought, at some stage of your career you got to look after yourself, and that's when I decided that I thought I might need a move.
Well, just before you get the move to Linfield, there's a wee a video went viral a couple of years ago again, which I wasn't actually that aware of at the time. Back, I think it was 1986, off to Salzburg.
Yeah.
And you scored a 3-2 win over Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
It sort of came out of the blue, because there was a team who actually came over to watch me playing at Mornview against Ards one day, and they were, it's like CSK Linz or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the name was. But then it was a couple of weeks later, Nigel Best phoned me and told me that a team called Casino Salzburg then wanted to take you on trial, and I thought, it was hard enough for me going down to Glenavon without going to Austria, but I thought, hey, why not? So I thought I'd give it a go. So away I went, I flew out to Austria on the Sunday. And then it was a real difficult week, I have to say, because I got there and obviously the language barrier was tough. But nobody really made an effort to engage or to speak to me, and it was tough. So it was going into training in the mornings. You were just training and then coming back and lying about a hotel room until the next day, and then we played the game, and obviously it was Bayern Munich who had some big names playing on the night, and I scored a goal. It was a decent goal as well.
Fantastic goal.
But Michael Galt wasn't happy because he was that busy in here. Just whenever the video went viral again, Michael Galt was busy telling everyone in our academy here that he had scored in Europe against Croatia Zagreb, and Mario Mandzukic had scored for Croatia, and Galt, he was giving that. And then all of a sudden this video comes out with me scoring against Bayern Munich, which sort of...
Matthias and all was playing.
The kids are all going, gee, he scored against Bayern Munich and you're talking about Croatia Zagreb. But anyway, I played that, and unbeknown to me, there was an agent who got involved in Austria and had contacted Nigel Best to contact my wife to get it all arranged for her to come out, because they were offering me a contract after this. And so the next day the manager got me in with this agent boy and had offered me it was a really good deal, considering it was 1996, of £1,500 a week and a house and a car and all this kind of stuff, but I just knew it wasn't for me. You get that feeling. Yeah. On the pitch things went well, but I just thought, it would be difficult. A couple of young kids at the time, and you're taking them into an environment that they're not used to, and I would be away most of the time. It was difficult for me, but it would be even more difficult for them. So that day after the meeting and after training, I went down. Ajax were playing in the Champions League final on the Wednesday night, I remember, and I went to the bar and I asked the barman for a pint of beer, which really you shouldn't do if you're on trial, but my mind made up. Yeah. So surprisingly, the barman was actually English. So for the first time in the 3 or 4 days, I was able to have a conversation with someone who spoke English. Yeah. So one pint led to another, and I ended up watching the Champions League final, had a few pints, and I told them the next day that it wasn't for me, and I was going back home again. Yeah.
Any regrets looking back on that?
No.
Good things that turned out different.
100%. People said to me, you should have given it a go, but if I'd have done that, I might have had regrets for doing it. Yeah. So definitely no regrets for not doing it.
As in terms of a trial, it couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah. I actually went on a trial around about the same time, the Wraith Rovers. Jimmy Nicholl was the manager. Again, I played in a match, beat 4-4 or Arbroath, or some team beat them 3-1. I scored 2 goals. And again, Jimmy Nicholl got me in, wanted to sign me, but the deal that they were offering wasn't anywhere near what I could have done, lived with, so again I had to turn Wraith Rovers down.
Well, here, you came to Linfield a couple of years later then, and great times then. Yeah,
it was great, I just knew, I remember I got there around Christmas time, 97, and I sat down with my dad and my mum and my wife and family and stuff, and told them that it was time to move on. I needed a new challenge. I needed to try and... My aspiration was to win the league championship. I'd never done it. I'd won most of the other trophies with Glenavon, but I wanted to win the league championship. So I made Adrian Tier aware that I wanted to go on the transfer list. It didn't go down too well with Glenavon on the board, but they understood my reasoning, and then they put me on the transfer list, and then that's when the clubs then became interested.
And there's a whole host of them, no doubt.
Yeah, there was a few. Obviously Linfield, Glentoran, Coleraine. I think Ballybeen showed an interest as well at that stage, but listen, I didn't Kenny Shields was managed at Coleraine, and Kenny tried to sell the club to me what Coleraine could offer, but there was no way I was ever going to Coleraine. So it came down to Linfield and Glentoran. Had to keep my options open. I'm not sure how much Glenavon had, what price tag they'd put on my head at that stage, but I had to keep my options open in case one or other club couldn't come up with the transfer fee. So obviously I met with David Jeffrey and Linfield, and as David is good at, he sold the club to me in that case. But I also then went to speak to Roy Coyle, who was a manager at Glentoran at the time. Sat with Roy, and Roy actually at Glentoran offered me more money. Had actually offered me a goal bonus, which I'd never got before in my life. That's probably one of the regrets I've had.
You're a millionaire now.
When you score a few goals, you don't get any bonus for it. But no, I spoke to Roy Coyle, and I came out and I sat for a bit, and then I actually phoned Roy Coyle back, and I just said to him, Roy, if you were manager of Linfield Football Club at this moment in time, what would you tell me to do? Yeah. And he says, my son, I will tell you to sign for the biggest club in the country. And I says, well, that's what I'm going to do. And I phoned Adrian Tier and told Adrian Tier that Linfield was my preferred choice. And then, of course, the transfer fee haggling between the two clubs, and then they came to an agreement, which thankfully Linfield came up with.
Yeah. £55,000, I believe it was a record up until a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was
for a long time.
It was 55,000 in '98, and then I think that stood until Shane McCartan was first, or Lee Bonus, but they both went for 100. So time moves on, records are there to be broken, and the two lads have certainly Lee Bonus this year has justified that by winning the league. Yeah. Shay's a quality player. Probably will admit by his own standards he would probably know he could do better, but still a very, very good player, quality player, and I'm sure there'll be better to come from him.
So what was it like then? You spoke to Glenavon and told them you're moving on. You said they weren't happy about it. Mm-hmm. Was that relationship okay though going forward after that? Or
yeah. I had some really good friends down there on the board and in and around the ground, and any time I go down there now, I'm still welcomed with open arms. It's great. Probably the initial impact of it happened, and some of the fans were probably disappointed because Steve McBride had moved on, and then when I move on, you're losing a lot of goals out of your team, and everybody wants their team to be successful, and to be successful you need goal scorers. So to lose two in such a short space of time, they would have been disappointed. But listen, everybody has to look after their own interests at times, and that was my time. But as I say, every time I go down there now, it's great, and it's, as I say, it's still a fantastic club. And the women who I spoke about earlier, who do the food, and Maureen and Margaret and the ladies there, they're still there, and they don't look the sip of aged any, in 30 years, so it's great to see them still there.
Okay, so that was just the interlude music there. Sorry, I was throwing you off. So 55 grand, you've signed for Linfield, the record transfer fee. What's the pressure like? Going there then.
Well, to me, it wasn't really pressure on me because I didn't pay the money.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's up to the clubs whatever they think I was worth and what they wanted to pay. Linfield paid the money. The pressure was on me just to get my first goal. Yeah. And it took 4 games for it to happen. And I remember we played Coleraine in Windsor. I think Tony Gorman was the penalty taker at the time, and we played against Coleraine. And my big mate Wes Lamont was goals for Coleraine. So Tony gave me the penalty to try and get me off a mark, and of course Wes saved it. So that didn't help, and he would still remind me from time to time that he'd done that. But again, ironically, football throws up various twists and turns in games, and my 4th game for Linfield was against Glenavon at Moorview. All right. And of course ball comes in the box and I stick it in the net, and the chorus of Judas from the Glenavon fans all start, but just the way I say football throw things up, and my first goal for Linfield was against Glenavon after leaving.
And what's that like? Is it, you obviously listening to the fans who were cheering you the year before, and they're now calling you all this. What's that? What do you feel inside? Do you feel like good to get one back over on you, or are you
sort of, but it's sort of one of those things that you expect, because when you leave one club and go and play for another, supporters are passionate about their clubs and they support them, and sometimes some of the things they say is out of order, but totally. But no, they're passionate. But it was more relief for me getting the goal, and you then have to try and justify the transfer fee. So for me, that first one, getting off the mark, was probably relief more than anything else. But I did celebrate the goal. People say sometimes you go back to your old clubs, don't celebrate, but I always celebrated goals because although it was my first one, you just never know, it could have been your last, and that's the way I've always looked at it. So I celebrated basically every goal I scored.
Yeah. Well, you scored enough.
yeah, over the years.
To perfect the celebrations. So what about the mindset? So when you were talking about Glenavon then, it sort of felt like the dream team kind of broke away. And I think in every walk of life you have that in different jobs. People have a great work, then people sort of drift off and it changes and things aren't the same anymore. So that sort of happened to Glenavon for you, with McBride leaving and whatnot, and maybe you wanted to win the league. You told Glenavon that. You've gone to Linfield. The mindset is, we win trophies here. So what was that mindset like changing for you then, to going from now you're leading the pack, if you like, to win these trophies for Linfield?
Yeah,
all of a sudden it's you.
I'm being totally honest. It didn't really change for me, that, because I prepared for every game the best way I could, and I think I would get the best out of me. So when I went to Linfield, my daily preparations didn't change. I went to bed at the same time on a Friday night and ate the same food on a Saturday before a game, and had my bottle of water and Red Bull before every game. That all was the same for me. I just found that I was going into a dressing room with players, not all the players in the other previous teams, but you're going into a changing room with players who have the mindset that we have to win, and the winners, and there's a lot of time there's no excuse for losing. We have to win games, we have to win trophies here. So that's what I wanted, and with that comes added pressure, because Linfield fans, when you're winning, can be the best in the world, but when things aren't going so well, because there's more of them than any other club, it can get quite feisty, and supporters get annoyed as well, which is understandable because they want to win as well. But players don't go out to lose games, they go out to try and win as much as they can. But I felt whenever I went to Linfield that the whole professionalism, the standards was just up another level, and with my time there, I've seen players at Linfield who stay there for a long, long time. Your Noel Bailey, Winky Murphy, Stephen Douglas, Michael Galt, Timmy Mulgrew now, myself, Davy Larmer. You're talking to get 9, 10 years. Yeah. But there's players who have done really well at other clubs across the Irish League and beyond, and in England as well, who came into our dressing room and maybe only lasted a year because they weren't prepared for the intensity of the pressure that was expected of them. And you could see that at other clubs. They were more relieved, less pressure, and they were able to influence games more because they didn't think there was more pressure on them. But when they came to Linfield, it was just a case of, at other clubs, sometimes you don't have to do it every week, but when you do it, you're good. At Linfield, you have to do it every week, and that's what a lot of the players. I'm not going to name names, but there'll be a lot of players who, came into our dressing room probably thinking this is me now, and just couldn't handle the pressure.
I think that's always a big thing to say about a lot of footballers. Once they sign for the big club, they think they've made it. But the hard work's only starting. Yeah,
even really? Like we had some players who came over from England. I'll mention like Fitzroy Simpson played for Manchester City, and I remember watching him playing against Man United, and he came to Linfield, and he wasn't good, to be honest.
I remember he was actually in my thoughts when you were talking about that there.
So he wasn't good. On the other hand, we had Kenny Irons, who played for Tranmere Huddersfield. Wasn't a big name, but came in and was absolutely superb. And what he'd done, he was just a real good professional footballer, and really helped us. Phil Charnock came in, unfortunately got injured, was really, really good as well. Paul Dalglish came with a massive name, came in and didn't do it either. So there's players who come in with big names, big reputations, and couldn't handle the pressures and the intensity of Irish League football.
I remember the thing with Fitzroy Simpson, did he train in England all week and then, same as Paul Dalglish, and then fly over for the match?
Yeah, they'd have trained, and then they'd have come in Thursday night for training. Thursday night, stayed in the hotel, played Saturday, went home, and then done that on a weekly basis. But on the other side of that, Kenny Irons and Phil Charnock were exact same. But they were able to come in and perform and do well, where the other ones couldn't. Again, it could be a mindset, it could be a mentality thing. Some can handle it, some can't, and some can prepare different ways. And, listen, managers sign players, not everyone's going to work out. Unfortunately, a couple of those lads didn't work out for us.
Yeah, I think Dalglish only stayed a couple of months, didn't he? If I remember
only,
not even, maybe.
Yeah, he only signed
Maybe was it July and away in October?
Yeah, possibly like that. But everybody was buzzing because I think in his first 10 games he scored 5 goals, but 4 of them were penalties.
I remember everyone was buzzing because his sister turned up in the cup. We were all going, "I one off a TV."
Yeah. But it just shows you as well. But you can be as big a name and have a bigger reputation, no matter who your father is or whatever. But it's up to you ultimately to perform. And unfortunately, Paul wasn't able to do it.
No, that was it. And you see, when you come to Linfield, then in terms of training, is the intensity different than it would have been before?
Yeah.
Are you training every week, every night? Sorry, or
yeah, you go and train against John Easton and Mickey Murphy, and you'll know all about it. We trained the way we played, and that was the manager drilled that into us. That had to happen. There's no point going out and just going through the motions in training because then that'll translate into the game. Yeah. So we trained extremely hard, both Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then as the game progressed, we started coming in on a Monday as well. So we were training 3 nights a week, but it was all very, very high intensity. I think that's why throughout those really good years we were all so fit, because boys, without wanting to stereotype the modern footballer, boys nowadays would gladly take a day off if they've got a slight strain or they want to go and get something looked at or get scanned. A lot of time I spent the majority of my career playing football taking diclofenac every week or every other day for anti-inflammatories, and it wasn't on my own. Boys were getting out with straps on, they had strains and they were getting injections, and we just wanted to play and wanted to train. And that's just how we became so good. We trained really, really hard, and that then resulted in getting good performances on the pitch.
Yeah, I think it's something in the modern day footballers, you say, like you watch any match across the water, they're rolling about the place and there's nothing really wrong with them. Yeah. That would never have washed in the Irish League. No.
I watched that Manchester United Brighton game, and to be fair, if I was out on a Saturday night getting into a fight, I wouldn't like any of them backing me up. That's for sure, because the slightest we touch or pull or slap and they're rolling about, it's unprofessional trying to get people sent off or booked. And it didn't happen. It's coming into our game more and more, but it didn't happen as much back in the day.
Why do you think that is?
I think probably the influx of more European players. They weren't used to maybe getting tackled or manhandled or players being aggressive against them as much.
Like they see it as part of the game, as winning a free kick as part of the game, as opposed to, But that's one thing I was actually going to say to you as well. I don't really remember a time you were out injured for big long periods.
Well, one of my longest injuries actually was when I was playing for Glenavon. I got injured in about the February, March time. Steve McBride got injured in the January, had a real bad knee injury, and then I got injured in the February with a really bad knee injury. And then that's actually Jared McMahon came in as a young boy, played in the Irish Cup final against Linfield at the Oval that day, scored a goal and got a move to Spurs. So we always joke that Steve and I were scoring goals for fun, season after season, and Jared comes in and scores a goal in the cup final and gets a move to Spurs. But that again, that's just being at the right place at the right time. But no, Jared was a smashing player and had a great career. At Linfield, I was very fortunate. I've seen a lot of my teammates, Mickey Murphy, Jim Irvin, David Larmer, all having cruciate injuries, maybe broken leg. I didn't have any of that. I had some medial injuries in both knees. I had an operation on my ankle at one stage, which kept me out for about 12 weeks. But other than that, there was no real serious injuries, which I was very, very glad of.
Yeah. The modern day footballer now, I'm sure all the wee niggles will be lying about the place. And
sometimes, in the old Windsor Park under the South Stand, Terry Hayes' physio room, sometimes there would have been a queue down the hall when we 8 or 9 players just queuing up, but it was to get an injection, to get a strap on, to get a rub so they can go out and train. It wasn't an idea to try and get them off training. Yeah. It was to get them strapped up and fixed up to go out to train. And that's basically what it was.
But that's a big mindset too, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's no one in the team that's going to bring his, I don't fancy playing today. I mean, as you said, your intensity of training is just like a match.
Yeah, I think the other thing of it was as well, we had, not just a great team, but we had a great squad through those years. And it was a case of, if I was playing in the team and went out with a slight injury, I had Chris Morgan and Davy Larmer and laterally Peter Thompson breathing down my neck. So if they get in, I'd then try to win my place back. So if you're playing well and you're in the team, you don't want to come out of it. Yeah. So people did play through the paint barrier a lot of times.
And I think as well, the squad seemed to be that good from a fan's point of view. If someone was having an off day, you had another 10 players who were playing brilliantly.
Yeah, a lot of the changes were like for like,
Yeah.
As I said there, if I wasn't playing well and I come off, if David Armour or Chris Morgan or Peter Thompson, whoever it may be, striking wise, come on, there's not much of a difference there. You're still going to have a real goal threat, and that was the same, right across the midfield, defensively sound as well, so it was a good time.
So banging in the goals for Linfield from the offset. You got a call from Laurie McMahon to sign up for to call up for Northern Ireland. How did that come about? Does he ring you, or how does that even come about?
No, I got a phone call, actually. I think it was Derek Brooks.
Okay.
Was secretary at Linfield to tell me that I had been called into the squad. The squad had already all met up, and on the Thursday, James Quinn, who used to play for West Brom, Northern Ireland, got injured, and I got a phone call to say that I had to report on the Friday to training. And it was a bit surreal, was this a wind-up? You're not sure whether it's a wind-up or not. Didn't even have my boots or nothing, so I had to phone, God rest him. Davy Tibbs was the kit man, stroke boot man, helped Gary Eccles, they all worked together. Had to phone Davy Tibbs to tell him to get my boots ready. I had to come get my boots, and then I went into training. You get into the scenario with international footballers, and you're thinking, what am I doing here? But once you get into the squad and into the group, and you see the training, you realise, if anything, you're not that far behind.
Yeah.
Some of the players are there, they're not anything out of the ordinary. You can compete. You know your basics of what to do in a football match and training and stuff. So it was really enjoyable. Ian Dowie, I say, was very, very helpful. He's a big influence when you get in there. Very, very friendly, and made it easy for you to sort of come into the group and transition into meeting everybody and talking to them. It was great.
And do you enjoy getting a run out then?
That was great. It's one of those moments that nobody can ever take away from me. Making my debut at Windsor, in particular, coming on against Canada was, again, unbelievably proud moment for me and my family. When I was that wee young boy at Dungoyne Boy, did I ever think I was going to play for Northern Ireland? No, absolutely not. But it's football's a game of progression and trying to be as best you can, and that's what I done. I just had a progression of Dungoyne, Ards, Glenavon, and then Linfield, who were the ultimate team in our local league. So then to get the call for Northern Ireland, obviously it was something that I'd never dreamt of. But don't get me wrong, the Northern Ireland team at that stage weren't unbelievably good, and if there was better players about, I wouldn't have been called in. But you gotta seize the moment, and I did. Went in and tried my best in training, and stayed in around the squad for about 3 years. So it was good. It was a good time.
I remember being there that night, and I remember there's always a big thing for Northern Ireland fans when an Irish League player's playing or gets brought on. The whole crowd go bananas for it. Even if you're a Linfield fan or a Glentoran fan or Clinton, whoever you're supporting, players coming on, it's always a big thing for the local game. Yeah,
the ironic thing that night was I made my debut, and Rory Hummel also made his debut as well. And Rory was playing for Glentoran at the time.
Yeah.
And Rory got every bit as big a reception as what I got. Yeah. And both of us went back to the hotel that night, and it was one of those moments we're sitting like this, and going, we've just played for Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
So we had a good wee night together, so we had, but the players in and around, the squad, your Neil Lennons, Jim Magiltons, Stevie Lomas, David Healy, Ian Dowie, some really, really good. Michael Hughes, Premier League players then.
Yeah.
So it was good mixing with them, and as I say, they all made us feel welcome.
Yeah, great times.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Do you still keep in contact with a lot of them?
Well, everyone's spread out all over the place now, but yes, there's none of them would pass you if you see them. I would see Ian Dowie's actually involved with Larne at the minute. So I was talking to Ian a few weeks back. We're down there. Obviously I see David Healy on a regular basis here. But any time you bump into Jim Magiltons or Neil Lennons or Stevie Lomas, they wouldn't pass you. They would all definitely talk to you.
Yeah, and it's something I was reading about was that Neil Lennon gave you a really big compliment. I think it was a big night that he got in a bit of trouble.
That was a game I actually started in against Norway at Windsor Park here as well. Went out and a bit nervous, standing in the tunnel, the tight tunnel below the south stand at that stage, and we're walking out and Ollie Guller's Solskjaer stand there as if he hadn't a care in the world. His boots weren't even laced up, and John Carew was the centre forward, and really, really good Norway team. So no doubt. I played, and I think at half time there's a a threat against Neil Lennon's life from some idiot who had decided to tell the police or something. So Neil had to come off, and after the game, we came back in the change room and everybody was talking, "Are you okay, okay?" And then he just happened to say to me, he says, he thought I played well. He says, "I can't believe you've never got a move across the water," So, and obviously he was playing for Leicester at the time and played some really good games, and he played for Celtic, which probably brought on some of the bad press that he got. But he said to me, he couldn't believe that I'd never got a chance to go and play across the water in England, because he thought I could have done it.
And why do you think you never did?
I don't know, to be honest. I'd be the first to admit I was never the quickest player in the world, but I was able to sometimes think quicker than other people, and that's what maybe got me my yard of space. But I know in England and further afield, they look for players with pace a lot of the time. But listen, it's one of those things. If it happens for you, it happens. If it doesn't, I certainly believe that there's players who were worse players than me got a chance. But there's certainly a lot of players who are better than me also got to move across the water. So listen, I have no grudges or no bad feelings about it at all.
Well, as a fan, I can tell you from watching you hundreds of games playing, you're always in the right place at the right time. So that's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that just comes again with playing a lot of games, comes with experience and trying to read where the game's going to go and where the ball's going to go. You can't stand still. You need to be on the move and trying to make for my particular instance, being a striker, you got to make the defenders think all the time. Don't be standing up against them. Try and get into the spaces, playing between the two centre halves. Expect the unexpected. Expect the ball to be missed by defenders. And when the opportunity comes, you got to try and take it. And thankfully, over the years, I was able to do that on a number of occasions.
Yeah. So 5 caps you had for Northern Ireland. I'm sure there's good times out celebrating after big, meeting up with the squad and whatnot. Like, I think you know where we're going now. Like, 5th cap was out in Prague against Czech Republic. Czechoslovakia might have been back then. And then a certain incident happened that night, and Sammy McElroy was pretty quick to say that none of you are going to play again for Northern Ireland and whatnot. But what happened that night? It was one each, wasn't it? Was it one each away?
One each. I think Phil Mulrine scored a header to equalise at the back post. But after the game, like all the players, backroom staff, we had our meal. We went out for a few drinks and we ended up in a bar. And in our particular company, there was myself, David Healy, Peter Kennedy, Michael Hughes, and Tommy Wright. Tommy was the goalkeeping coach at the time. So basically, you didn't pay for any drinks at the bar. You had to have like a tab, and if you got up and get 4 pints, they mark down 4 pints. So on leaving the bar, Tommy got the bill, and we paid Tommy the money. Tommy then went to the bar, paid the bill, but as we walked out, there's like a foyer bit, and there was a bouncer there, Pavel Stepan, I remember his name for a long time. He stopped Tommy and started giving off in their language, basically indicating that Tommy hadn't paid the bill. And Tommy says, "We have paid the bill, go and see that." No, you haven't, you can't go. But by all accounts, we heard in later date that this boy was at this quite regularly, but Tommy was adamant, we have paid the bill, and then this bouncer just hit Tommy a dig, basically in the chest, solar plexus, and winded Tommy. So he was sort of confrontational towards the bouncer, saying, "No, what are you doing that for? We have paid it." And so we started to make our way out. Myself, Peter, Michael, and David made our way out, and after a few drinks, on a football match, Tommy says to his boys, "Get ready to run." We just laughed, we're running nowhere. So next thing, Tommy's in the street, the bouncer chasing him, basically. So one thing led to another, and we went back to the hotel. The police came, and we got arrested for assaulting the bouncer. So it was all brushed over. We were there for a couple of extra days. Sammy McElroy came to Tommy with the tickets and says, "You're the most senior, you look after them." And away they went into the moonlight.
That's right.
Yeah, so the 5 of us stayed in. The first night we were in the police station, and then we had to go we had to go and stay in a hotel for the next night, and then we got it all cleared up, and then we come home. And after that, I was in the next squad. It was away to Denmark in Copenhagen. Tommy was in that, and the other boys were obviously all in the squad. But after that, then I was never in the squad again. I think Tommy was no longer the goalkeeping coach. David Healy, who was the star man, of course, he was still there.
Yeah.
He had to keep David. Michael Hughes was the captain, so Michael was there, and Peter Kennedy played a few more games as well. So yeah.
I remember, I think was it Keith Gillespie's book that he mentions it, and he I think it was Keith Gillespie's book I read, and he says that he kind of thought you were maybe he took the fall guy for it. They wouldn't get rid of David Healy, as you say. They wouldn't have, not picked those guys, but because you were maybe from the Irish League and a bit older, that they were.
Yeah, well, listen, things are what they are, But there's one thing about Keith he also put on his book. He was suspended for that match.
Yeah.
And Keith had, because when we went away or we went out, Keith was always there. So Keith says he was actually glad he was suspended, because if he had been there, he would have been in the middle of it, so that's good. But no, listen, you got to hold your hands up. I ended up getting done for GBH for fighting with the bouncer. The other lads got off with it, so it was pretty easy for me to then be left out. But listen, it is what it is. Look back on it, and I'd just be thankful that I was able to get the caps that I did and be involved for so long.
Yeah, and I read then when I was doing a bit of research, Northern Ireland were playing again, and you were going to go as a fan, but you didn't want to go out to Prague. Is that right?
No, I wasn't allowed. No, because even when I was playing for Linfield, and whenever we get into Europe, every time the draw came around, I was just thinking, please don't be the Czech Republic, because I think I was banned for 10 years, so it was. So, but it's all good now. So
yeah. Well, I appreciate you talking about that.
Yeah, nothing to hide.
That's it. So maybe go back to Linfield time then. Okay, so great. Obviously, you've scored so many goals for them. I'd like to ask you about sort of a period of 13 months as a fan was up and down. I'm sure it was as a player. I can't imagine what it was like. And as a lot of my Glentoran friends have reminded me yesterday, it was 18 years ago since Morgan Day. 18 years, hard to believe, I think, but the fact that they're still talking about it, but we'll say no more about that. But the leaving the Oval that day as a fan, we're just dejected. We're just absolutely gutted. We thought we were about to win the league as a Linfield fan. What was it like as a team?
Probably devastating is probably too big a word, because there's other things going on in the world that it's devastation. But it was as close to it as it can be, because obviously. Being 2-1 down and Davy Larmour scoring the goal to get the 2 each.
Yeah, when Davy Larmour scored, I think we're going.
The point probably would have been enough for us. But then again, football throws up all these twists and turns. And David Jeffrey, who had get rid of Chris Morgan the previous year, and when Chris was leaving, I'd spoken to Chris and he told me that the Glens were interested, and foolishly, I says to Chris, if you still have aspirations to go and win trophies, don't be afraid to sign for a club simply because you're leaving Linfield. Yeah. So, of course, Chris goes and signs for Glentoran and scores the winner that day. Chris is a great player, a great friend, and, just he had to do what he had to do on the day, and he scored the winning goal. We came in totally deflated, shocked, hurt. There's so many emotions going through people's heads, that we'd lost the league championship that day and the way that we lost it. But it's one of those things, once the whistle goes, there's nothing you can do about it. You've got to try and regroup, and refocus and try and do duty. And you know what? And back in the day, David Jarry was the best man to do that. So he got us in training. We knocked our pans in training. We had a big game to try and put it right. A couple of weeks later in the Setanta Cup, a game which no one gave us a cat's hell chance of winning. You're playing Shelburne, who were full time with a squad full of top quality international players in their own backyard. But we went down, put in one of the performances of our lives, and run away 2-0 winners. And then I think that match really, really gave us the emphasis and set us up for what happened next.
Yeah, well, you forgot you scored a goal that day.
I scored one again, Peter. Myself and Peter. Scored the goals, but I said that one was definitely a team effort because we were under so much pressure for so long, and every player to a man, deserved it that day.
That's probably going to follow on. What I'm going to follow on to is that the season went on after ended up being like another clean sweep season, but the mindset going from that day of the dejection and what happened that day. 3 weeks later, you're saying Shelburne were complete favourites. I remember it going like Linfield are really up against it here. Is that less pressure on you going into the Shelburne game then, because they're just overwhelming favourites?
Probably, to a certain extent, yeah. Yeah, but I'll go back to what I alluded to a while ago. It's about having the right people in the change room who can deal with that pressure and having the right mindset to really stand up and be counted again and up their game the way we did. And as I said, the change room was full of players like that. So that's other people, players could have crumbled after that match and really went into their shell and not done well the next season, where we went in, big characters, dragged players up with the boots and said, listen, let's go, we need to go and try and do this. And yes, we weren't favourites. Less pressure. I was going to say no. I wouldn't say there was no pressure. At the end of the day, we're Linfield Football Club getting into a cup final. You're expected to win. But deep down, people are probably thinking, if we go and give a good performance here, and it could be a moral victory. But the way we went about it, and we went and put in a really good performance, kept a clean sheet, scored 2 goals, and say it was a great moment. Another great night of celebrations, that one.
And I was going to say, what was the celebrations like that night?
Well, we went back to the hotel. We stayed in the Grand Hotel in Malahide, and the bar was pretty busy.
Yeah.
And then we went up to one of the bars up the street, and when we went in, it kept a bit of a bar for us. I'm not actually sure who it was, but it was either West Effort Boys Home. We're actually in the same bar. So it was like a VIP type area, and we sat there and had a few drinks, then went back to the hotel, had more drinks, and it was pretty chaotic at times, even coming back up the road on the next day, the bus, it was carried on the bus and the singing, and it's just, I think it was more relief because nobody really expected it, and we certainly did make the most of it.
Yeah. Well, you must look back on that as one of the highlights of your
100%. People have asked me, numerous occasions, what's been one of your best achievements or best matches you've played in the Setanta Cup's right up there. Playing for Northern Ireland, yes. Winning the Setanta Cup, clean sweep year, it's right up there with the rest of them.
Yeah, I was someday looking back.
Yeah.
So that was a perfect way to sort of end the season and sort of put that hoodoo of losing the league at the end of the season. End of the season with the Setanta Cup. Then it goes into the next season, and Linfield went pretty much undefeated for most of the year. I think we only lost once.
Yeah, we were very fortunate that year. We worked really hard in pre-season, built up a good squad, a really good squad. But I think over the course of the season, we had a team that was very, very rarely changed. The back four stayed the same. Midfield, we dominated midfield with 4 big players: Oran Kearney in the left, Tim Mench in the right, Michael Galton, Paul McAreevy. Myself and Peter, I think that year we scored 90 goals between us.
Yeah.
So, and the midfielders, Oran double figures, I think Mackers was double figures. Tim Mench could have been. We scored a phenomenal amount of goals that year, and defensively we were sound. It was just one of those years when everything just went according to plan as such. Everyone, we just went out and steamroller teams, and I think when teams came to Windsor, they knew they were getting beat. It was just by how many, and that's just the way it was that year.
It seemed to be an expectant crowd as well. I mean, as a fan turning up every week, you're expecting 3 or 4-0. There's no, and in the conversation with me and my mate, I would go with my friend Lofi would go, right, Thompson's going to get the first goal this week. No, Ferguson's going to get the first goal this week. It was just, there's no debate about it really. There's no chance of Linfield getting beat.
Yeah,
really.
I think that's what it was. I think it was because the confidence was so high. The football we were playing was really good.
Yeah.
And the expectations was just, as a case of, we done it last week, we'll do it this week again, and we'll just do the same things. And probably to a certain extent that's what happened. We just played the same way. We just steamrollered and bullied teams, and really, once we got the ball, teams found it hard to get it off us. We got into good areas, we created chances, and one of those years when the chances, everyone was taking the chances when they came, and I'm sure we scored 140 goals that year, 150 goals.
But it was like you'd beat the teams before they turned up. Man United had that thing about them, Mike Tyson had that about, sporting greats have it.
It's an aura of some, predictability of, they're coming and, they're going to score 3 or 4 today. So we're not going to score 5, so we're not going to beat them.
Yeah.
So as I say, if they get beat 1-0, it was like a moral victory to someone.
Yeah.
And even when we went away from home, some of the teams thinking, right, we're home here, we might have a chance, and within 20 minutes they're 2-3-0 down, and the game was over. You know, it was difficult places going to Institute. I remember going down, I think we beat them 9-1 or something down in Institute, and we were beating teams 8 and beating teams 7. It was just a real good, fluent year.
I always loved Drumahoe because there was a good chippy beside it. Are you saying about the team rarely changed that? How important is that?
Oh, I think for continuity, familiarity, knowing players, knowing what's going to happen, you know, people overlapping and people covering, and you know who's making runs in the box. Set pieces are important, you know, so when you have the same people on the pitch on a regular basis, you know, it's just this is what happens and it's going to happen, you know.
It seems a lot of modern football is all about rotation and, you know, people being rested, but if you remember Mourinho when he was at Chelsea the first time, I think he played the same team, you know, whether it was the league, you know, the League Cup first round or it was a final,
Yeah, well,
you know.
I think that's probably the way it should be. I think if your team's doing well, because players train and play well to get into the team,
yeah,
and they don't want to be left out of the team just because the manager's rotating. You know, it's a case of if your team's doing well and they're winning matches, keep playing that team. If someone looks tired or has an off day, then change it.
Yeah.
You know, why, if a team wins 6-0 one week and then you make 5 changes because you just want to rotate players and then the result doesn't go your way, the manager then gets criticised for changing it. So I'm a great advocate of if the team's winning, play the winning team until circumstances dictate, should it be injury, tiredness or lack of form, then you have to change it. Yeah. I would just keep playing the same team.
And modern football seems to be a bit more about rotation now, does it?
It does, you know. I hear these players gurning because of they play 2 matches a week and they're full-time footballers.
Yeah.
You know, they're training 3 days a week, 4 days a week and playing 2 matches. You know, my first year at Glenavon, which I talked about earlier, the 91 season, we played 64 matches, yeah, as well as going to work. You know, so Linfield this year, I'm sure, will have played in excess 60, 65 matches as well.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of matches, but you just have to get on with it.
Suppose as well, going back to winning the Satanta and kick-starting the clean sweep after such a, you know, a letdown, I feel like Linfield, I thought this season, at the start of the season in Europe, and there was that penalty shootout that just didn't go our way. Probably a wee bit of a hangover from that, and the expectancy of probably Linfield should win the league, or, you know, every fan thinks they should win the league. Are Linfield going to come back stronger next year then?
Well, they're going to have to. Yeah. You know, what happened this year certainly did have an impact on the players. You know, you can't be that close to being in the group stages and the possibility of earning possibly £4 million. Yeah. You know, 1-0 up. You know, people, it's all ifs and buts, and people said, you know, if Cammy Palmer had done this, or if it's all ifs and buts. You know, if Jimmy had kicked the ball into the stand instead of into the net, you know, listen, no player means to do that. You know, you just have to try and get over that hurdle. Yeah. Once it was gone, it was dead and buried. I think it certainly did have an adverse effect on the players and the management and the backroom staff coming so close, deflated for a few weeks, and then, you know, but I think it's not just the result. I think it's what's happened over the whole course of the season. The amount of games and training and travelling, you know, has taken a toll on Linfield. You know, and we keep saying, you know, you don't have a divine right to win the league. You have a divine right to challenge, to try your best. You don't have a divine right to win it. Larne were worthy winners this year. Linfield's probably biggest achievement that they have is that they can bounce back and they always will challenge the next year again. Yeah, there will be a job. There probably have to be some more recruitment done this year, which I'm sure they're working tirelessly at. Yeah, but you can always say, Tiernan Lynch said it in an interview, you know, if you finish above Linfield, you're probably going to win the league. Yeah. And I would imagine, you know, Linfield will try hard again next year, and hopefully that'll be the case.
You don't fancy getting your boots on again, do you?
No, absolutely not.
Right, just going back to that, the clean sweep year, your great hat-trick against the Glens in the cup final. Mm-hmm. Boxing Day at the Oval, I think Linfield won 4-1 that day. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were some great results. Yeah. You know, and personally for you, some obviously goal scoring records, but hat-tricks and finals against the Glens.
Yeah, that season in particular was, I say, we scored a lot of goals, Peter and I, between us. But, you know, I remember just the way things happen, as I say, in football. We went to Armagh and we needed to win that day to win the league. And we won 1-0. I scored the goal, you know, so you get that one over the line. In the County Antrim Shield, your semi-final against Glentoran, we won 1-0, and I scored the goal. Then we go to the final, we beat Ballybeen 2-1, and I scored the winner in the final. Then you go to the League Cup final, you beat the Glens 3-0, and you score a hat-trick. You just go, you know, the season can't get any better. Yeah. And then you go to the Irish Cup final, the final day of the season, and you think, right, we need this here for the clean sweep. And Glentoran's tradition in the Irish Cup, we go 1-0 down, and you think, oh, here we go. You know, we're going to blow it in the last day. But then my partner came up and he scored the 2 goals on the
Yeah.
day and we ended up winning, so honestly, it was a great feeling that night.
And was it? I was going to say, was it a relief when you won the Irish Cup as opposed to being, and not that obviously you're celebrating, being happy about it, but I remember just there was an expectancy about Linfield that year that they were winning they were bulldozing everyone, as you say, and winning every trophy was kind of nearly the minimum requirement in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it would have been disappointed for us not to do it
Yeah.
because of how we played that year. There's other teams that came close. I think Glentoran came close one year and lost out in the final to Coleraine. But they didn't play the way we played that year, and I think that was, if anybody was ever going to do it, it was us that year, simply because of the way we played and we steamrolled teams. And even to a certain extent, when we went 1-0 down, there still was probably an air of confidence that we had the ability to come back and score goals and come back because we had done it on numerous occasions. So, it was relief to get it over the line because, obviously, the legends from 21 and 61 are still talked about, so for us to go and do it, albeit not as many trophies, but you can only win what's in front of you, and at that stage we were holding 5 trophies, Satanta and the 4, so that's as much as we could do as players, and we were able to do it.
Fantastic year. My father actually always looked back at the 62 team, and Jackie Milburn, he always said was the best player he ever seen at Windsor Park, and he's seen George Best play, he's seen the greats of the 50s and the 60s play. And he always said Jackie Milburn was the greatest player I've ever seen at Windsor Park.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. Obviously back in the day, we would still see Isaac Andrews, at certain times, and then you had Tommy Dixon, boys, John Park. My dad always talked about John Park and some of the players from the 7 trophy team. He just says they were just a joy to watch as well. So every era has their heroes, as they say.
That's exactly it. Just at the last bit, I was just going to mention about getting beat by Distillery. That was the only defeat you had that whole season. Now I think the fans are enjoying us. We were lifting the Gibson Cup that day, and I'm sure the players are all looking forward to that. And the Grand National was that day, and we all went to the wee bar underneath about 4:15. Watched the Grand National and came back out for the trophy celebrations. It was a great day as a fan, I remember.
Yeah, the fans always love them occasions. It's when you're lifting trophies. For us, probably it was disappointing, but it's hard getting into games. When you've won the league title, you're getting presented with it, with the mindset that you still have to be right up there, because it's over and it's happened, I
think that's understandable, though.
Yeah, to a certain extent. It's still disappointing to lose, but we knew when the whistle went, we'd done our job and we were getting the trophy, so it certainly helped.
So a couple of years later then, as good as it started at Linfield, it all comes in and you go to Distillery.
Yeah.
So how come you ended up at Distillery, or what happened there?
Well, what happened was I was at that stage of my career then. I really wanted to start to get into coaching, starting on the coaching side of things and how to deal with players, man management, and that side of it. So when I was released here at Linfield, there was 4 teams who had contacted me. It was Ballybeen, Glenavon, Newry, and Distillery. Mm-hmm. So I gave them all their place and I went and spoke to them all. But when I went to Distillery, Jimmy Brown was the manager, and he says that he wanted me to come in, be like a mentor sort of thing, and then get on come in as first team coach. That's exactly what I wanted. So just to start that process on the ladder. So that's how it came about. Just unfortunately, that was in July, start of August, and then Jimmy got the sack in September, October. Yeah. So things didn't go so well. But the good thing is, Tommy Wright came in as manager, who had known Tommy for years, and so the same thing happened. He brought John Cunningham in, and then I was involved as first team coach for a period of time, and then we were struggling as a team. We were struggling. Tommy came in. I'm nearly sure we were bottom of the league, fighting for survival, which we got. We were able to survive, get enough points on the board, and then, as I say, the twists and turns of football. We somehow got to a final of the League Cup, which nobody in their wildest dreams would have expected against a very good Portadown team. We had some experienced players in around the squad at that time, and Pat McShane and Andy Hunter, Paul Muir, myself, but we also had a lot of young boys. Jordan Forsyth, who's at Crusaders, David Cushley, Scott Davison, boys like that who were all pretty young. Yeah. So that was honestly, that probably goes down as one of my best trophies to win as well, because there was absolutely no expectation of us to winning anything. Going to Mourneview, beating a very, very strong Portadown team.
Yeah.
You know, basically we were a team who were down in their boots, no money, just a lot of boys basically thrown together, well organised by Tommy and John Cunningham, I have to say. But we just went out and gave it our all. And we got it over the line, and you know, and David Coosley and Scott Davison scored the goals, and it was a great occasion.
Another trophy to add to the collection, like.
Unbelievable. You know, I thought my trophy winning days were over after leaving Linfield, but to go and get another one, that was a major achievement for me.
And then went to Ballymena to manage.
Yeah, I was. Tommy then moved when we were at Distillery. Tommy then moved on to Norwich, I think it was, as goalkeeping coach. So John Cunningham then became the manager. I became assistant manager then. But that didn't actually last that long, because the Ballymena job came up around December time, and I applied for it, went for the interviews, and I then became the Ballymena manager in January 2012, I think it was. Yeah, so went in there. It's a tough gig, management.
Yeah.
I'll say that. You know, it's a tough gig trying to balance budgets and players, and trying to just improve a squad. You know, I'm just saying this, when I within the squad wasn't great, hence was why the previous manager got sacked. And the results weren't great. You know, so I had to just go in and try and improve every transfer window we did, try and add a little bit of professionalism, a wee bit of steel. You know, so we did. And over the 4 years, we enjoyed it. We obviously beat Linfield in 2 County Antrim Shield finals, which was, as a manager, was a big achievement, because, you know, Linfield are never easy to beat. No. And when you've got a team that probably is nowhere near as good as what they are, but given instructions on how to carry it out, and we were able to go and do it. Losing the Irish Cup final to Glenavon was disappointing. And then the losing the League Cup final to Cliftonville was disappointing, you know. So no, listen, but it was 4 good years, you know. I enjoyed there, but you know, all good things come to an end, and that happened.
That's it. So Ballymena ends, and now you're in looking after. Is it what's the official title here?
My official title now is head of youth I'm full time. But when I got the sack in Ballymena in the February, and just basically done nothing for about 3 months. Packed obviously football in, actually packed my job in and work, and so I just took 3 months off just to recharge the batteries. And then David Healy contacted me and asked me would I be interested in coming in. At that time the role was academy director. David Chisholm had just left Linfield, but it was on a part-time basis. Yeah. So I said, right, I'll go think about it. Went home and thought about it, and then decided to take on the role, and done the part-time role for 5.5 years. You know, great. Completely different to senior football, coming in, trying to help young players on the journey to become better players, to get close to our first team, to maybe get a move across the water, just to make them better players and better people. So we've done that. I've done that for 5.5 years, and then the transition from the club to go full time, their 5-year strategy, the role then became full time. So I applied for the role as full time, and was fortunate enough to get it January last year. So almost a year and a half in this now. So
and is it good to give back to the youth now?
Yeah, listen, I love it. You know, the kids are, you know, we've some really good, talented players here, but, you know, the coaches are wanting to learn, the players are wanting to learn, you know, they want to get better. And it's great to see over the years, the ones who've been here the longest, how good they're growing into really good footballers and getting opportunities now to play for the underage Northern Ireland teams. They're getting a chance to move into England, into the full-time circuit over there. You know, some have made it and played for our first team, which is great, you know. So it's a sense of achievement for everybody within the academy, coaches, you know, the managers, myself, just to see them all progressing. You know, you're not going to get everyone through, but if you can get some through, it's a bonus for us.
And do they realise they're working under such a legend of Linfield?
To be honest, I don't think so. Some of the young ones probably don't even know who I am, you know, which isn't a bad thing. You know, some of the older ones, even to a certain extent, some of our 16, 17-year-olds are probably only born when we've done the clean sweep. Is that right? No.
What's that, 15, 16 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, so they probably the only way they'll find out about me is if they Google it, you know. But no, listen, they're all up for learning and listening, and if any of them ever need any advice, I'm here. So we just want to try and make it as easy for them to become better players.
So the future of future of youth football in Northern Ireland's going good, and the future of youth at Linfields?
Yeah, I think right across the board, every club are up in their game now. They've all got, the majority of them have all now got full-time academies. We have our JD Club NI Academy, which Andy Waterworth and Chris Lindsay, two excellent boys, are running. And doing a good job. We've a lot of players have come through that as well. So the players have got a real massive opportunity here to do well. And it is really like a full-time model, and that'll only set them in good stead for when the opportunity comes, or if it comes, for them to go across the water and hit the ground running and go into the full-time setup. And
have you noticed any young ones just remind you completely of you? Is there any stand out for you?
The last one that I mentioned that I thought played the game like me was Dale Taylor. He wasn't a massive 6'2" centre forward, good body shape, strong, can score goals. And obviously he then got his move to Nottingham Forest. So Dale would be Scott Hamilton at our 2008 age group. Is something similar. He's smaller in stature, really strong, scores goals for fun. So there is a few. There's completely different centre forwards out there who are more mobile than what I was. Some are more technically gifted than what I was. But they all have their different traits, but they're all looking good.
Well, you've given us a couple to watch out for, and for the future, so that's great. Just one more wee section, if that's okay.
Yep.
This last wee section is just really about getting to know a few wee quick questions, if that's okay. So, everyone knows you as Spike. Mm-hmm. Where'd that come from?
Well, again, I spoke about earlier, when I came back from Wales, we moved into Ballybeen estate. And I lived in a row of houses, 5 houses, and I was number 1. And I got to know a guy who lived in number 3, and ironically enough, his name was Ferguson, Clifford Ferguson, but no relation. And again, we came through, we played for school team together, we played for Dungoyne boys together, and to this day, we're still very, very good friends. Clifford is actually the chief scout for Liverpool Football Club in the whole of Ireland. So it just so happened, back in the day, I used to go and get my hair cut like a skinhead. And when it started to grow, instead of growing flat, it started to grow up and out. And he was the one that called me Spike. Way back then, and 45 years later, it's still there. It's stuck.
Funny how names stick, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing, But so he always says that he's the one that nicknamed me Spike.
I've always wondered that.
That's how it happened.
So talk us through a big day. This is probably a question that I'm more interested in, the geeky side of me. So you're playing the Glens at 3:00 on a Saturday. It's a big game, winner take all thing. What's Friday night like? Can you sleep? Is it too hyper? Is it what's it like? Talk us through that.
I'm being honest. I never got nervous in games or leading up to games. The only time I ever got nervous was 1991 Irish Cup final against Portadown for Glenavon, and so I wasn't nervous until I walked down in the corner at Windsor, walking down towards the corner flag, and we came out, and the whole place was just red and blue. The crowd was massive, and then the butterfly started then, but. After that I never really get nervous, but my whole build up to a game, 3:00, used to go to bed on Friday night, 9:00, Will and Grace, Friends, used to watch that. Up on Saturday morning, used to take my son to his football. Used to go and watch his football, come home to the house, get myself showered and ready, and we'd have had pasta and chicken and white sauce.
Lovely.
Glass of water, glass of juice, and then off to the game.
So what time were you arriving at Windsor Park at then?
We usually arrived about 1:30.
1:30?
1:30, yeah, but an hour and a half before the game.
Yeah. And then it's in the team talk first, and then a bit of a warm up and all.
Well, you come into the dressing room. The boys would have had a bit of a chat and stuff, and a bit of crack. About 1:45, the manager would have started his team talk. Probably till about 2:00. Named the team talk, and then the music goes on. People have their own routines, how they go about it, what they're putting on first, their left sock, their right sock.
I was going to ask you, was there anything like that?
No, I didn't. The only thing I did have, which my wife absolutely detested, was I had a pair of what we call their slips, the trunks for under the shorts. And I must have had mine for about 9 years, and they were white. Well, they were meant to be white and grey, and there was holes in them, and every time I brought them home, she wanted to throw them out, and I wouldn't let her. But no, a lot of like Noel Bailey never done a warm up, never went down onto the pitch to do a warm up, and he played over 1,000 games. People say, "Why? How did he do that?" No, Noel would have just went into the shower room with a ball, kicked the ball off the wall, done his stretches in the dressing room, and come out and played like Noel Bailey. It's amazing. But other people needed to get out to do it just to relax themselves, you know. But no, that was the daily routine. Just, it was nothing special.
And what was the dressing rooms like before the big kick-off? Were people punching the walls and going, "Come on, let's get up and at 'em," or
no,
quite subdued?
Not really.
No.
Team talk was done. David obviously would have been like that. You know,
Yeah.
let's go out and punching the medical bed in the middle of the table. You know, we need to go out here. And after that, it was just everybody was really focused. You know, you're talking to each other, what's expected of you, shake hands, back each other up, the way you go. And went out and played the game. You know, so there was no real.
So you've gone out and you've beat the big team. You won the league. You're back in. Who's leading the celebrations in the dressing rooms? I can only imagine.
It wasn't even a celebration. It was just in, you know, post match. David would have, you know, said his bit. You know, well done, good points, bad points. You know, what we should have done better, what we done well. How we won the game, and then, you know, boys would have just walked around, shook each other's hands. Well done, good performance today. Up the stairs into the players' lounge and had a beer.
Yeah,
that was it. There was no real, you know.
Even for the big wins.
Yeah, well, the big ones like cup finals and stuff. You know, you're in, and you can imagine who the what do we call the class clowns would be. You know, Stephen Douglas was, you know, probably one of the funniest and jokiest players I've ever played with. Great lad, great player. Really, really good fun. But no, we would have had some crack.
Any good stories, or maybe share them in a different podcast?
There probably would be some good stories, you know, but probably that's for another day. You know, we've had celebrations I remember my first league title, you know, down at Coleraine. Ironically, I think we could beat that day, possibly by Distillery. Won the league in Coleraine, and we were in the bath. It was an old bath at the time, and they brought in a crate of beer, and we drank it. And brought in another crate of beer, and they were trying to get us out. I think we were still sitting in the bath at 7 o'clock. You know, so the boys just continued to drink the beer because you'd won the league. You know, so that's one thing. We played together, we lost together, we won together, and we celebrated together as a squad. And that's one thing I can say about the squads over the years. We had a really, really good camaraderie in the dressing room. There was never, or very, very rarely, was any bad words spoken between the players, which was good. And if it needed to be said, it was said, but it was said in a way, you know, that people understood why it was being said. It wasn't being said just to try and be a hard man or trying to bully somebody. It was said in a you know, in a way that people understood it. Okay, just a couple of quick questions then to finish up. That's okay. Who do you support as a football fan, growing up and now? Well, Linfield and Manchester United. Manchester United from 1977. There we go. And did you have a favourite player growing up? There was just a lot of good players. I liked Mark Hughes at United at the time he was there. I loved watching Glenn Hoddle at the time. Ryan Giggs, good player. Eric Cantona. You know, there's a lot of players there. He could go through, and you know, Alan Shearer was a really, you know, really loved watching Alan Shearer simply because he was probably the same size and stature. Me. Played the game the same way, only he was getting paid a lot more than me. And then I was fortunate enough to meet him at one of our Umbro dinners. Similar celebration. Yeah, you know. So no, he was a top player. Yeah. Who was the hardest player you ever played with and against? Hardest player played with, you know, Winky Murphy would be up there. You know, Winky was the enforcer in the back four. Didn't take any nonsense. Wasn't dirty by any stretch, but he was tough. He was strong. Hardest player played against, there's been a few, you know, Mark Glendenning, Gary Smith, you know, Glenn Dunlop, Barry Hunter, you know, a lot of big, strong centre halves who made the game difficult for you. What's your favourite ground away from Windsor? The Oval. The Oval. Love going to the Oval. Love going there, playing well, getting results and scoring goals. Yeah, you know. The shoe celebration. Yes, I'm from East Belfast. You know, I would get a lot of stick and abuse from Glentoran supporters. So going there and winning games, you know, certainly not a hatred. It's just a respect, a football respect that, you know, they were our biggest rivals, you know. And if you go there, the pitch was always immaculate. You know, the groundsmen were good, so you knew you were going to get a good game of football. And if you win the game, it was a bonus. Did you have a bogey ground, a ground you never scored at? To be honest, I don't think so. No. You know, I honestly don't think so. I was pretty fortunate to be able to score at nearly every ground, or probably every ground. Yeah. Have you got a favourite goal? Two ways: the importance and just a generally fantastic goal. Well, 2006 Boxing Day at the Oval. A lot of people would talk about. That's the 4-1. Yeah. Yep. The volley at the back post. You know, because of the way the cross into the box, how deep it was, having the volley it off the ground, the technique to keep it down, it was, and then again, who you're playing. Again, you're playing at the Oval, you're playing against your biggest rivals on Boxing Day, so that's a massive day in its own. But to score a goal like that was great. And probably the Satanta Cup, it wasn't a brilliant goal. It was a volley, a left foot volley. But it
kind of falling over.
It put us 1-0 up again in that game, but nobody gives us a chance to win. So it gave us a platform to build on, to go to win that game and then take us to where we went to.
Have you any regrets in football?
No.
Good.
No regrets.
What do you do away from football, and how do you relax?
How do I relax? I've got a few grandkids now, so we would spend time with the grandkids. I actually like going on holiday whenever I can, get a few breaks away throughout the year. And I like just spending time with family. We have people around the house for food and drinks and just basically a bit of crack, So
you see, because your life is so much football, do you go home and watch like Champions League matches all the time, or do you kind of stay away from it?
Yeah, sometimes. But sometimes you get footballed out. Yeah. You've just had enough, and you just, I'd rather go out for a walk, or I'd rather watch a film, or go out somewhere. Sometimes you can get football overload, and then it just means nothing. Then where plus the fact some of the games that are on TV at the minute are pathetic. So it does put you off watching some of them. But you can't get on the world.
I think it's good to see crowds coming back to the Irish League again.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think it's the whole infrastructure. The grounds are getting better. People want to come now. Hopefully, the games are getting better as well, or are improving than what they were over the last number of years. There's more competition now. There's not just one or two teams running away with it. There's 5 and 6 teams who are right up there challenging.
Well, that's going to make next season. I mean, as you say, 4 or 5 teams. Any of them could win it.
Yeah, obviously Linfield, Glentoran full-time, Larne, Crusaders, Clivenville are probably about going the hybrid model full-time. Coleraine will probably strengthen again. It's been well documented that the bottom 6 teams are probably going to get further away, but it's up to them now to try and find a way to generate more finances to compete. But you can't knock the other teams for doing what they're doing.
No. It's going to be exciting times. An exciting league next
year. It will be, yes. Looking forward to it.
What is your favourite drink?
Lager, beer.
Which one? Do you have preference?
I would drink Budweiser, but I don't have Budweiser. I don't like strong beers. No. I don't like the IPAs or the Heverleys.
I'm the same. I don't like any of that.
It would be Budweiser, Coors Light, or Carlsberg, stuff like that. Just something
proper, keep you going all day.
Easy drinking.
Yeah. Favourite footballers to watch these days?
I think Jamie Mulgrew is very important for Linfield. Has been for a number of years. Yep. Really, really important. I think Conor McManaman on his day is as good as anything there is out there.
Yep.
He's a good footballer. My son, love going to watch my son playing.
Yep.
I love watching him, his enthusiasm. He's overcome this serious injury, which he was out for 2 years, and he's come back and he's back playing, so I'm enjoying watching him again. But other than that, in general, I just like watching game changers, boys who can make a difference in a game. I spoke earlier about Shane McCartan. Shane McCartan certainly got that. He's got ability to hit one from 30 yards and twist and turn people inside out. On their day they're good players. Leroy Miller, had as a young boy at Ballybeen. It's great to see where he is now, just winning the Player of the Year. So a lot of good players out there.
Yeah. So one last question. I heard you're a bit of an Elvis fan. And you're at Graceland, is that right?
I have been, yes. I went a couple of years ago. It wasn't just Graceland. I'd done the sort of music. I went to Nashville and I wanted to go and see what that was like. And then I went to Graceland as well, and finished off in New York at some of the music bars as well. So yeah, we like our music. And
as I think I asked you beforehand, but will you sing us out?
No, absolutely not. One thing about me is I love music. I love listening to music. I love to go and see live acts. I love to go and see bands, but I can't sing a note. Yeah. And that's one thing about it, And I just enjoy live entertainment. I think it's good. It's refreshing, rather than just listening to CDs or podcasts with music on them or whatever it may be. But I love seeing so many. I love watching people who can play instruments and sing at the same time. I went and seen the Eagles down in Dublin last year, and Gareth Brooks. I just thought they were outstanding. Just watching them entertaining so many people was great.
Well, you entertained us for a long, long time, Glenn, and I'd like to thank you so much for giving me your time today. It means a lot to me as a fan, and for what I'm doing here. So I'd like to thank you very, very much for your time, and hope you got a bit out of this too.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks very much, Paul.
Thanks very much,
Great.
Glenn.
Thank you. Bye bye.